Hi everyone. I think I've said before that brevity is not my strong point. As I was writing up my notes for this presentation, I realized I was writing so much that I would have had to put it in a font size 5 in order to get it all in. No joke, I'm seriously terrible at Twitter. So what I've decided to do is I'm adding an audio overlay and just creating this file as a video for y'all to watch. It's actually from PowerPoint. I'm just using an add-on called Office Mix. Oh, and it's free if you have Office 365, so seriously try it out. It's pretty awesome. Anyway, this is my presentation on creating characters and driving desires. I hope you like it. Creating a character through desire is an idea I came up with without even ever realizing it was an idea. In the readings On Desire by Todd Mitchell, one of the first things he said was characters must want something in order to be interesting. Well, I decided to take that a step further and say, what if what they wanted becomes a driving force of their personality? In my first novel that I wrote the best character I've ever written. I've written 12 books since then, and I've never been able to match that character, and I've never been able to figure out why until I actually read that blog post by Todd Mitchell. And that character was driven by desire. I gave her a high stakes desire, and in this case it was freedom. She wanted to be free from a mundane corporate life. She wanted to be free from dealing with the law. She wanted to be free from dealing with her family. And then I gave it to her, but I gave it a catch. So she had all the freedom she wanted, but I made her crazy. I made her, have hallucinations that told her what to do. So in a way she was free, but that freedom came with a cost that was so much bigger than what she wanted in the first place that it became part of her personality. So I think that picking that desire for a character can really help you develop a great character as long as you make the cost bigger than what they actually want. I think every single one of us has had one defining moment in our lives that changed who we are. We might not have thought it was a big deal at the time, but it completely changed the way we perceive the world. For Chuck Palahniuk, the writer of Fight Club, that moment actually occurred when he got into a fight with a group of guys at a campground. They were up late partying. He was sick of listening to it. He was out camping with his friends. So he went over to tell them to quiet down, and he wound up getting beat up pretty bad over the whole incident. And the next day, when he went to work and he was just covered in like bruises and cuts, not one single person asked what had happened to him. They didn't want to know. And that's when he said, I realized that if you look bad enough, people would not want to know what you did in your spare time. And he used that one moment in his life to create the character Tyler Durden, who was the antagonist and eventually the protagonist in the novel Fight Club, which is kind of the defining novel of his career. And it all happened thanks to one single moment in his life. Sometimes one flaw can be the entire basis of a character's story. As stated in the 9 ingredients of character development, everyone has some personality trait that irritates his friends or family. Consider Scarlett O'Hara, who was probably one of the best written characters I've ever read. Her biggest flaw was her biggest weakness and her greatest strength. She's selfish and intensely so. However, that selfishness gave her the single-minded determination she needed to make it through the war. Her selfishness drove her ambitions, both her ambitions to survive and her ambitions to get Ashley Wilkes. Her desire for Ashley became so real to the reader that we sympathized with her, even though she wasn't exactly the best person. Even if we didn't entirely blame Rhett for leaving her in the end, we were able to understand her because we have similar flaws. And the heavy focus on Scarlett's flaws in Gone with the Wind was really what drove her as a character and made her strong and weak at the same time. A lot of great works have come from an author being angry about a certain injustice. Take Animal Farm by George Orwell. The satirical novel was written with one thing in mind: George Orwell's deep resentment of British people blindly loving Stalin and Stalin's politics. Um, But Orwell, just being a writer, didn't really have the power to fight a man as big as Stalin on his own. But through his own writing, he fought. He made Stalin ridiculous through the use of his artwork. He turned him into this self-centered, manipulative pig named Napoleon who ran Animal Farm into the ground and became just as bad as the oppressors he initially claimed he was fighting against. I think a lot of characters can be built that way. When you're angry about something and you feel powerless to fix it, you can build somebody in your mind to fight back against that injustice. And there's nothing anybody can say about it because it's fiction. One of my favorite novels is A Farewell to Arms by Ernest Hemingway, and one of my favorite quotes in my favorite novels is, "The world breaks everyone, and afterwards, many are strong at the broken places." I think this is a great ideal for setting up character development. On a completely different note, take a look at any of the pulp fiction or graphic novels that you see. Most superheroes have the same kind of story where they're just an average everyday guy and then they get bit by a radioactive spider or some space rock hits them or something like that and they have superpowers and they go from ordinary to being extraordinary. What differentiates them is their backstories, how they became who they are, and how they decided to use their powers the way they did. I mean, if you look at Batman or The Batman, if you're a graphic novel fan, which I am, but look at the Batman, but for the fact of his backstory, he'd be nothing more than a rich man who really is good at buying his way out of trouble. But the fact is, he has a tragic backstory. He's the orphan of parents who are murdered by unchecked crime and corruption in his own hometown. His trauma makes him human, and his trauma is what makes him relatable. His trauma is what makes him a good character. It's not about all the fancy gadgets and money he has, it's about how he got there. And building a character on a backstory is all about this. It's about how the person became the way they became. When it comes to nature versus nurture, I'm strictly on the nurture side of the fence. I think that people are built through their experiences. They become who they are through what they've gone through. And I think characters, good ones anyway, should be built that same exact way. They're risky and they make us admit that we have bad parts of ourselves that we don't want to admit to. But like Hemingway said, we're all broken. And it's in those broken places that we become the strongest. And because I don't like ending on a little cliched the end slide, here's a picture of owls because I dig owls. Thanks for watching.